right, you guys ready to learn some tips and learn some information from these gentlemen up here? Right off the bat. Now, Carl, you're a bait man.
I am.
You catch a lot of bait.
We do.
And I got a feeling it's going to be the same answer across the board here, but what is the three of you, start with Carl, what's your number one bait?
Skipjack.
And why?
Skipjack, the oily consistency of skipjack is just, it seems to work consistently through bodies of water. The Ohio River, Tennessee River, doesn't matter where you're at, it seems like skipjack is key. And the quality of that skipjack is key. A lot of guys catch bait. There's a difference in catching bait and keeping bait. Keeping fresh bait, there's a trick to it. A lot of guys will go out and catch bait. I'll see them throw it in the cooler. It'll be 75, 80 degrees outside, sun shining on it with that much ice in it. That fish is drying out. You're losing the value of that bait right there. Keeping that stuff iced down, and we take care of the bait probably better than I take care of my kids, my dogs. So, end of the day, fresh bait is key. So,
fresh.
Fresh.
I agree. Rob Benefield, a lot of the catfishermen know Rob real well. He's a great fisherman. But 2 or 3 years ago, he showed me how he kept his skipjack, and I'll share that with you. It's no secret, but I'll fill my cooler completely full of ice, and when I catch the first skipjack and I pour water in there and make like a slush, it's freezing cold slush, and as soon as they come off the hook, they go in that slush. And when I get home with them, I'll take them out, vacuum seal them. But when you use that bait, it's firm, it's hard, it stays on the hook good, and it looked like it was just caught. That's the way I keep mine now. Used to, I just put them on ice, but that slush, that cold water chills them somehow. But I agree, skipjack, I never have fish live bait, but I've tried shad and several other things, but the skipjack, if they don't bite it, then there's something wrong. They just love it. I don't know what it tastes like to them, but it must taste like candy because they love it.
Tastes like Reese's Pieces to me.
Yeah.
Big Daddy.
Well, it'd be pretty hard to follow up what them two just said, but of course the keeping the bait is the key to catching the fish. The fresh bait, just like Carl said, that's the key to catching fish. But I will have to say this, and of course I've never used nothing with skipjack, that's all I use, but I have, when I fished up around y'all up on the James River, they proved to me that them big gizzards would beat skipjack, and it did. I sat right beside some gizzard shad, and me hard-headed, I said, dude, you ain't gonna beat these skipjack. I was fresh, I'd caught them before I went up there. But I caught a fish every time they caught a fish. I caught them one fish for fish, and theirs outweighed mine about double. So it didn't take me long to learn when I hit the James River, I need to be finding me some shad somewhere.
That's a good tip, and that's going to lead us right into our next one. I'm going to let you follow that up. Depending on where you're at in the country, how do you depend and decide on what baits or what bait you want to do and use?
Well, the proper answer to that is match the bait the fish is eating out there. You get out in some lakes that don't have any skipjack. I still use skipjack, it's like I told you on the James River. I just knew that there's no way them shad would beat that skipjack. And not only did it do it once, it's done it every time I've been up there. Mm-hmm. They would bite shad better than they would skipjack. And I really think, Chris, that's the only place I've ever been that I had confidence in anything but skipjack. And I think the confidence factor's got something to do with the whole thing too. If you're fishing with a bait you have no confidence in, you probably ain't fixing to get on. You got to have confidence in what you're fishing for. And back to what Carl said about keeping that bait, Yeah, I'm a fresh bait man. I don't like froze bait, but I would rather have well taken care of froze bait as not taken care of fresh bait.
Yep.
That's the key to catching a big fish. I mean, I've actually dug down through my cooler on maybe on a 2-day tournament and find me still a good skipjack. It's good and firm and had some good things happen when I throw him out there. I mean, I thought that's just the key to it.
You never know what you'll find in them coolers someday.
Oh, that's exactly right. Exactly right. What you find in your bait cutter some days, Mr. Madden. But yeah, it's just hard for me to fish anywhere. If I was going cat fishing, I'd probably have me some skipjack somewhere.
Mr. Morris.
Well, kind of like what Jeff said. I mean, I use skipjack primarily, but James River, that's a place I go out there. I don't even carry skipjack out there. It's a shad. Higher River, when I fish the Higher River early spring, I think shad's better, early spring than skipjack for a few month period. That's what I think. So as far as matching the bait, some places, it's what's available there. What they feed on is how I look at it, but also the time of year I think makes a little difference. Moon eye is a bait that I know isn't real popular down south, but up north to us guys, I mean, we love to have some moon eye come summertime. It's a bait that I do real well on, but I usually don't do well on it early spring, and I don't do well with them froze. So it's kind of again matching it to the time of year and the body of water. Skipjack is my favorite, but I'm not afraid to go to shad or go to a live shad either. There's times where we do really well on live shad, catching big blues. Everybody thinks live shad's only for flatheads, but we catch a lot of big blue on live shad too. So I think it's just studying the area and trying to match up what's available in the time of year. So
good. Mr. Shipman.
I agree. I also have had on the Ohio River, I've had the moon eye proven to me. Both of us in the same boat. It was frozen moon eye, but I'm fishing with fresh skipjack, and my partner's throwing moon eye, and he's catching them one right after the other. So I've had that proven to me. And I did drive 14 and a half hours to the James River with skipjack. Thank you, Jeff. I never caught a fish. You didn't tell me about the shad. But
I just couldn't hardly tell you at that moment. I don't think. I forgot why, but there was a reason I couldn't. I don't know.
He was probably competing against me. I'm sure. But I like the James River, but I did not do any good up there with skipjack.
So what you guys are honestly saying is that depending on where you guys are at in the country will honestly depend on the bait you use.
Something else too, Chris, it's a lot of times availability. Bait's getting tough. And I mean, we'll throw that net and get some carp if we got to. And been a lot of big fish caught on Asian carp. I don't like fishing with it because it ain't skipjack. But fresh carp in the summertime, it's a pretty good bait to use now.
Yep.
It's a pretty good bait to use.
That's good.
It's been a lot of big fish caught on Asian carp.
Yep.
That's There's a boy sitting right back there that's caught some big ones on.
I think they ought to be on this panel too. I'd like to ask them some questions before this is over with.
Well, they don't get to ask no questions.
Oh. Hey, if for some reason you do have a question, just let me know. Best time of year, and we'll start with you, Carl.
Best time of year for big fish, to me, usually starts around about the end of October, 1st of November. I like the fall bite myself. That's my favorite time of year to get out. I try to get down to Alabama. Usually it's, end of October, 1st of November. We used to make a trip down there first week of November for I don't know how many years. Then they started scheduling too many tournaments at the same time, so kind of messed up our boys' trip. But that's my favorite time of year, probably followed up by late winter, especially if you got some real cold temperatures, a real cold winter. Winter like this one makes it tough because the fish, to me, are out moving around. They're scattered out a lot more. But when you get a deep, cold winter, it kind of pins those fish in those holes a little bit better. And man, when you find them, you can just, I mean, it's fire. So I'd say, you know, that first part of fall and then a late winter after a cold snap is usually my favorite 2 times to fish.
Big Daddy.
Well, you know, the fall bite's really good. That's just a time of year that I don't get to fish a lot, and I miss that bite. You know, I like an early spring bite. You know, when them fish are feeding up, they fix the spawn, and you know, you catch a 80-pound fish that can weigh 100 during and dead summer on the Mississippi River. You know, we fish the river a lot, and that's just when the water temperature warms up, and I would probably say dead summer on the Mississippi River for me. And I know the fall bite is better than the summer bite. I just don't get to fish that bite, you know.
I agree with both what Carl and Jeff said. The fall bite's probably a little bit better all year. If I had a choice of going in the spring or fall, it'd be the fall. I've had a hold of some big fish in December, January, February. I like the winter bite too, with water about 45 degrees. But the fall's probably the best of all of them.
All right, now with that kind of rolling us right on into the tournament stuff, you know, tournament etiquette is something, there's a lot of more people fishing tournaments. What is your thoughts on tournament etiquette, and, you know, your opinion, your tips, you know, the whole spectrum of how people should do it, approach it, and act?
I don't fish as many tournaments as I used to, but I've been well satisfied with the ones I fished and how they were run and everything. And I'm proud they came down, you know, years ago from 7 fish to 5, and some of them are at 3 now. I think that's a good, you know, if everybody had to, and most of them do, but you want to take care of the fish, number one. Of course, in the hot summer times when everybody has the worst time, taking care of them because the water's so hot. Hot water will not hold oxygen, so most everybody uses an oxygen bottle now. But I think everybody's going in the right direction with the tournaments. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have any.
Carl?
Tournament etiquette, you know, I guess that's a pretty wide range, you know, topic there. A lot of people ask me, you know, about the tournaments and if I enjoy them and if I like them, if they're ran well. You know, part of the things I go to the tournaments for is the camaraderie. You know, as I told the story about finishing in the 109th place, you know how I got better? Was by going to these tournaments with guys that were better than me and not being scared to going up and asking questions to guys, you know, and talking to them, you know, because a lot of these guys, I mean, they're great people out there, give you some tips. You know, being from Ohio, I never fished the Mississippi River very often. I got a chance one tournament, and I was actually fishing by Jason and Daryl Massengill. Jason came up to me after the tournament, and he made a comment to me. He said, man, you were right there if you just slowed down just a little bit. That tip helped me out a whole lot. So, you know, just getting around the guys, talking to them, don't be scared to ask questions. Show up to the weigh-ins. You know, one thing that always bothers me at tournaments, you know, is you got guys that, you know, they don't go out and they don't do real well. You know, they don't show up to the weigh-in. You know, I've learned if I do well, if I do really poor, I'm going to show up. You know, if Ryan's out there and he won that tournament, I'm going to show up and I'm going to clap for Ryan. You know, even if I didn't catch a fish, because I mean, that's what we're all a group and we all hang together and we all need to support each other. You know, and that's one thing that just kind of really bothers me at the tournaments is, you know, you got 50 teams and then all of a sudden at weigh-in you got 5 standing there when the prizes are getting awarded. You know, show up, support the tournament trail, support the guys that did better than you that day. I'm telling you, that hour you spend at weigh-in, you will learn more in that hour walking around talking to guys than you did in the 8 hours on the water at times.
All day.
So,
Yeah. So,
I could go on about tournament etiquette all day, so I'll stop there and let Jeff go.
You got anything to add to that?
well, you know, tournament fishing, none of us in this room that tournament fish can say that we fish it for the money. Because if we did, we would be bankrupt. I promise you. But it's the competing that I like. You know, yeah, I like veto call, but at the end of the day, if I don't, I'm okay with that too. You know, and I'm a big fan of what he said. I think that if tournaments are going to continue to grow, that we've got to show the support to the cities that put on the tournament. And for us to do that is as for us to pull our boats, you don't have to pull through the weigh-in line. You can pull out there in the parking lot, you know, pull out in the parking lot, let the city know that you were there. You know, the tournament record says I had 71 boats, and well, we didn't count but 35 in the parking lot. You know, and I think that's part of getting to the next level, going the extra mile. And you know, I'm kind of like Carl there about talking to people. I learn a lot. I learn a lot at the weigh-in. Some you have to tune out. You know, some might be some poison information, but most guys, if you'll sit there and say, hey, they ain't gonna tell you where they were fishing, but they'll tell you how they were fishing and what technique they was using, and if you ask them, probably even how they cut their bait. You know, it's just a wealth of information at the tournament, and I love to compete, and I hope I get to continue to compete.
Once again, just great answers. With you again, pre-fishing, yes or no? And we'll even narrow it down more than that, the day before.
Yes or no? No. It might be where that's the only time I could go out on the water and look. But I mean, I really think there's way too much pre-fishing goes on. You know, I mean, you got to know the water. You know, you got to know the water. Tell you what I'd like to see. I'd even like to see the waters closed a few days before we turn. It would make for a lot better tournament. And they can't do that because, you know, you can't drive up 1 week and then turn around and go back the next week, you know, but yeah, I would the day before the tournament, no, for me.
And we hardly ever hook fish on the day before a tournament. We may be out scanning, looking. If we are fishing, we're not fishing in an area we plan on fishing on tournament day. You know, there's times when you get out, you know, you get to a river or something's got a little current in it. You know, you want to go out and you might want to test it.
Hold up, Carl. Now, what'd you say?
He's fishing where I'm going to fish.
There might be that too, but you know, we don't want to go out and sore lip our fish before tournament day. So you know, we go out and spend a lot of time looking around, but you know, we may drop a hook in the water, you know, somewhere other than where we're fishing at to see if we're on the Mississippi. What we got to get, you know, the feel for the speed of the river, you know, the current, what's going on. But typically, you know, we try not to hook any fish on Friday anywhere we're going to be tournament fishing at. So we've caught too many good fish on Friday, you know, and I mean, it's one of those things. It's tough. You drive 500 miles to go to a tournament. You want to catch fish, but are you there to catch that fish on Friday or Saturday? Some people tell you it doesn't matter. Well, you know, to win a tournament, if that's what you're seriously going for, it does matter. You got to catch that fish on Saturday. So
Saturday's definitely when it counts, isn't it?
yes,
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with everything both the guys say. Brooke and I never will forget, we were fishing up at Loudon, Tennessee. And we had never been there before. We were side scanning and stuff, and I spotted a pig. And I just couldn't get over it. You know, we'd never fished there in that section of the river. And I said, I've got to put a bait down there. No, you're not going to do it. She wouldn't let me, and I didn't. But the next morning we went back and we were suspend fishing. I had 4 poles out. About 15 minutes later, one of them just took off, and I couldn't even do nothing with it. But it took off across the river. So I said, I don't know what's going on, but it wound up being a 30-pound striper. But I told her when I first hooked it, I said, I've got that big one we saw yesterday. But I agree with not. I do not. I may put a bait down there every once in a while. Like Carl, I may test the current and see what size lead I need to be using on the Mississippi. But if I put a bait down there, it's clipped on or just tied on with a string where they're not going to hook them or anything. If I want to just check and see if what I've got spotted is big catfish. You know, and you can tell they'll pick it up, and I've cranked them. If I'm in 60 foot of water, I've cranked them within 30 feet of the boat with no hook, and they'll finally let it go. But do not sore-mouth them. I had a friend of mine, I won't call his name, but the day before the tournament, they caught like 20 fish over 30 pounds. This was on Wheeler. And I'm thinking, man, that's not a good thing. Well, the tournament day, it was a 2-day tournament, they didn't even come to the weigh-in. I don't know what happened. Well, I know what happened. They sore-mouthed all of them.
You caught?
They caught?
You caught?
Huh?
You caught him.
No, I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him.
A catfish ain't like a bass. You know, you put a bass back on the bed, you might catch that bass again tomorrow.
Yeah, because he's getting.
I've never put a catfish back in and caught it the next
No.
day. Never.
No.
Never. Nope. Never.
Nope.
So let's kind of get into things a little bit deeper. Drifting or anchoring?
Drifted.
Drifting.
Drifting.
Well, trolling or drifting?
Drifting.
Trolling.
I like the drifting.
All right, now, why?
If I'm suspend fishing, you know, I wouldn't call it trolling, but I'm easing around or going down a ledge or something. I like my bait moving with the current. I believe it's more natural. And the fish, I think the fish are setting. I fish structure like Jeff and I think Carl. And if they're sitting there and that bait's coming to them, it's like a natural piece of fish coming to them. That's why I like it. I hadn't done it much any other way, and I don't know. That's just the way I like to fish.
And trolling, you know, I mean, I refer to it as trolling because most of the areas we fish don't have a lot of current like these guys got. So, you know, we got to pull baits. I found just better success. I mean, every once in a while, a spot locker or an anchor will, you know, do the trick. But I kind of like Dave said, I like that bait moving on those fish. There's times where I'll even anchor down in that current, but I'll still walk bait, you know, so my bait's still moving. You know, I've caught more fish that way than I have on an anchor, and I just think that benefits my style of fishing the best.
It's drifting for me. That's by far my favorite. But I like one rod in my hand and going down through there, and you know, something else that's got to do with that moving, that bait moving. You know, that bait's gonna fall where regular bait's gonna fall, and that fish is sitting there waiting on that bait. And you know, it's really not normal to throw a bait out like if you're on an anchor and that bait sit there in 2 mile an hour current. You know, that bait's gonna be moving.
Yeah.
And I really think that, well, I don't think it does. I know it triggers lots of bites because, you know, you play with speed. You know, you might be running a certain speed and not getting a bite, and I sped up, you know, and bam, you know, it's just it's a reaction bite.
Yep.
It's the way they feed. It's what they do. But yeah, it would be drifted 90% for me.
Well, that, you kind of just led me right on into where I wanted to go. So, you know, drifting, you talked about speed. I know you move. I've bumped beside of you and you be 2 miles down the river before I even went 100 yards. How fast is too fast? And why do you feel like, you know?
Well, Chris, you know, when for a long time I thought a mile an hour, you know, and you hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Mile an hour. And I really don't know what catfish wrote that in a book to run a mile an hour. But if you'll think about that bait going down that river, that bait's going the same speed that current's going, you know. And so what I really try to do is I try to cut my speed in half. You know, if I'm fishing 3 mile an hour current, I might be running 1.5 miles. I don't like to get much over that, but I've run 2 miles. I've I've run 2.5 miles an hour, you know, and I've also run 0.2 of a mile an hour. I think I do think speed is a factor, but I just don't feel like that nobody could just sit and say there's this speed you've got to run. So, and cutting the current in half is that's a starting point. You know, if that's a little too fast for you, then put a little heavier weight on, kick your trolling motor up a notch, and slow down just a little bit. You know, but I do see days. I see days that I feel like I get in the right speed. You know, and you know, fish might be a little sluggish. They might want it a little slower that day, or they might not even be biting, and you got to speed up to make them bite. You know, I mean, that's the way I look at it. You know?
I feel real similar to what Jeff said there. You know, I mean, some days seems like the faster you go, more fish you catch. Next day you can come back and you got to turn that completely around the other way and you got to slow down. One theory that I use typically when the river's up and rising, flooded and running, I'm usually going a little bit faster at that point. When she's going down, I usually cut it down a little bit. Same theory as Jeff. I usually start with the same mentality of cutting it in half, but like Jeff said, that's just a starting point. That doesn't mean that works all the way through. Sometimes you got to get out there, you know, and you got to slow that boat down. Keep that bait in front of them just a little bit longer. Some days they're on that reaction bite where when they're up and hungry, I'll move faster. I mean, when they're really slamming and hitting those pulls, I'll move a little faster and cover a little more ground at that point. But speed, I think, does play a part in it, whether you're on a lake or on a river. You know, fishing Wheeler Lake where it's, you know, there's no current down there. I mean, some days, you know, 0.3 is the ticket. The next day we'll be doing 0.7. You know, and it's just something I think you just kind of got to get out there and get a feel for it and mess around with it till you kind of all of a sudden, you know, you see what's working and then just kind of hone in on that at that point. So,
I agree. But I'm going to tell you something that Phil King, everybody knows Phil King, and he probably wouldn't want me to share this, but several years ago we fished the Mississippi River and we were in like 5 mile an hour current fishing a 3-ounce sinker. And of course we were out about 250 feet and we're flying down the river. I'm gonna say we was touching bottom every 100 feet, but we were catching fish like that. Now, I like it when you can feel and you set it down, you know, and you know, you feel when the bite is and
that's
you
right.
feel your brush coming. But that's not the only way to do it. That's the best way to feel when you get a bite and stuff. But when you got a 3-ounce sinker and 5 mile an hour current and you don't even know if you're on the bottom half the time and all of a sudden it'll want to slam it. I believe they got to be really aggressive when that happens. But yeah, I think from my experience on the Mississippi, when we're talking about some major current, I think you have to play with it every time because they want it moving faster some days, and some days I don't think they ever want it sitting still on the Mississippi River. But some days you can slow it down, and that's where they want to bite it. And some days it can be flying down through there, and they're going to get it.
All right, so your number one lake tip, because I know you like Wheeler Lake, and your number one river tip.
The best tip I would know, I mean, I'm used to Wheeler and Wilson where they're, like Carl said, there's hardly ever any current that you notice. If they got any current, you don't feel it. But I suspend fish. That's what I do, suspend fish. I got 4 baits out. I was going to go back to that a while ago, but I can see fish, and I know I'm on some fish, but I'm not getting bit or anything. And the rods are just sitting there. I fish about 2 feet off the bottom or so. I have fished 20 feet off the bottom, but that's very rare. But if you see them suspended up high, but you can sit there and I can move my boat just a little bit, 4, 5, 6 feet, and then back up. I'm on a brush pile, back up to it. And I don't know what the bait does, but that little movement, I'm liable to get 3 rod bites at that time. That's going kind of back to the movement of the bait, but I started suspend fishing when I first started, and I think I'm really good at it, but you don't always get bit. But if you're not getting bit and you're suspending, you just twist the boat around, make the baits move a little bit, and I believe that'll trigger them to bite if you're on them. The river tips, Mississippi River is the only one I can really call a big river, but it's tough. You may find them here today, and there may not be anything there tomorrow, but you got to do you got to spend some time on that thing, and tomorrow's a totally different day than today. I don't hardly ever go pre-fishing on the Mississippi River because I'm afraid I'll go to a spot that I know and I've caught fish on and I won't see anything, or if I bump down through there with just a bait tied on and don't get a bite, I may not want to go back there tomorrow, but tomorrow it may be loaded down with them. So Mississippi River's, it's a different ballgame. You can't bank on anything over there. You can catch them out of 10 feet of water, or you can catch them out of 90 feet. I don't really know if that was a tip or not, but that's my experience.
Well, hey, that's good experience. And good experience is good tips. Carl?
Lake tip. When I fish, I spend a lot of time on Wilson and Wheeler. I like to do a combination of, some guys suspend fish, some guys drag fish, drag baits. I like to do a little bit of both. So typically I'm running planer boards, I'm running some dragging poles and some suspended rods. I like to have a little bit of all. So I'll have a couple rods hanging out the back. Dragging, I like to drag way behind the boat. Guys think I'm a little different because I'll throw that bait out there. It'll be 250, 350 feet, out behind the boat. That's how I tend to get more bites that way, dragging. But then, I like to keep those suspended poles as well. That way I can get an idea, especially if we're, out there pre-fishing earlier in the week or something. I want to get an idea of, how the bite is. That gives you an all-around area to catch those fish that are up off the bottom moving, catch those ones that are down in the mud. Lake, you'll see those fish. How many guys have caught a big blue, its belly is just caked with mud. So some days, you get those cold fronts, they bury themselves down. So I like to do a combination of both. I do, and planer boards is something that I'm starting to get, in the arsenal. They've been around for a while. Guys have been using them. I haven't really started picking up using them until the last, couple years. But dragging those planer boards on those ledges and getting, one planer board up here in the shallow water, one on this ledge, and then one down here dragging that deeper water, so I can kind of catch those fish that are moving up and down that ledge. Typically they're down here set and they'll move up here to feed. I get a chance to catch all of them that way. River fishing, tip for a river. Study it, be safe. That's the first thing I'll tell you out there. A lot of guys, underestimate the power of some of these rivers and the current that's in them. So that's my first tip I'll tell you is, study what you're getting into out there, be safe. I've been out in the Mississippi River and I've pulled guys off dikes, I pulled guys off sandbars at 3 o'clock in the morning that had no clue what they were doing out there. Now fishing wise, gosh, I don't know that I can give you any better tips on a river than these two fellas right here can. So that's a hard challenge. Best thing I can tell in the river fishing, learn, if you like current, learn how to walk baits. That's the best tip I can give you, is walking baits down through there, whether you're anchored, or whether you're drifting and moving those baits at the same time. You practice that, learn how to do that. The best way to do it is start off, anchor your boat down, find you a heavy weight, and sit there and just start playing with it. Let that rod, that sinker start scooting back down through there and get a feel for it. And once you start catching fish like that with that rod in your hand, about the first time you're sitting there walking that bait through there and all of a sudden a 70-pound fish hits that thing, you're hooked right there. You won't fish any other way after that.
Promise.
Promise you.
Well, these boys covered my lake techniques about, I was like David, I used to suspend fish all the time. And then Carl was talking about dragging. I like to get away from the boat. I mean, we talked about this earlier. I think boat noise is a big deal. A lot of people don't, but I really do. I dove. I used to dive for mussels on the Tennessee River, and my partner could be in the boat ringing his shells, and he'd drop that shell ring. And of course, we was fishing out of an old diving out of an old flat bottom boat. He'd drop that shell ring and it'd sound like a stick of dynamite went off up there. You just don't, and I mean, I think boat noise has got lots to do with it, y'all. I mean, a whole lot to do with it.
Yes.
I got some partners that sound like a bull in a china cabinet in the boat. I won't call other names, but
They wouldn't be sitting in the crowd, would they? I mean,
but
I think you're back here laughing.
and I mean, you can ask them. That's one of my pet peeves, boy. You know, you can just as easy ease that top down on that cooler as to slam it. You don't have to slam it every time you open it. You don't have to do that. But no, really, and David knows this from suspend fishing. Boat noise is a big thing. You know, you get just a little bit too much wind, it starts popping that boat. Your suspend fish don't do it, you know. But that would be a good lake tip I can give to follow up with what they've done said. But yeah, you know, as far as the river, it can be really intimidating, really intimidating. And if you're trying to learn how to walk a bait or you're trying to learn how to bump, don't fall out there in the middle of that river and start down through there. You know, get behind a cut, find you a sandbar, and you might be surprised what you catch off that sandbar when you find one. But find you one and check the current. Get that current down to a mile and a half an hour or something like that, where you're on the sand and it's a really good place to learn.
Yep.
The middle of the river is no good place to learn, and it took me a long time to learn how to bump on the Mississippi River. And you know, the Cumberland River, it's a real good river to bump in. When you catch enough current coming down through there. But get on some sand, you know, some 20 or 30 or 40 foot sand or something, and you know, in behind a sandbar and where it's got the current broke off of you, but you know, you still got a mile and a half, couple miles an hour, and guys, it's an awesome way to fish now. If one of them jerks it out of your hand, it's kind of like Carl said, you're going to be hooked. You're going to be hooked.
I want to add something, Chris. Talking about that noise now, I can promise you, I've done it enough, not fishing for the big cats, but I used to anchor fish before I started tournament fishing real seriously. And I see a bunch of these anchors out here now, and it's a good way to have that piece of chain on it where it, you know, helps hold anchor down and breaks loose and all that. But if you anchor, you're going to be anchoring above where you're going to be fishing. You're going to throw back there. Well, if they hear that chain rattle, or if you just chunk that thing in making all that noise, or when you pull that anchor, if you've done drifted back over that fish, you're done. I can promise you that those fish are sensitive. They are real sensitive. Lord knows, he's drug anchor through a minute. Your anchor breaks loose and you don't catch, and it drags you into your fishing spot before you can do anything about it. You might as well go find another fishing spot, because they don't put up with that. And no, that's definitely a fact. And noise travels 10 times faster in the water than it does in the air out here. So you can thump the side of the boat and they hear it 10 times louder than you heard it. So those fish, those catfish, I've learned, and I think y'all will agree with me, they're a lot more sensitive than you would ever think a catfish was. They're more finicky than a bass or a crappie. They don't bite on just, a bass will bite on because he's mad at the bait coming by him 2 or 3 times. Catfish are not like that, unless maybe they're real aggressive sometimes, they might be, but they get turned off, and they're smarter than we give them credit for. I think they get adapted to a certain look on a bait or something.
Well, and a certain noise too, David, because you know it's kind of like some of my partners told me. Man, they load the scrap iron up there. But I said, that's what y'all sound like. We load the scrap.
But they know that scrap iron yard's over there and not here.
That's exactly right. and it ain't right over the top of it. You know?
Yep.
Well, let's change things up a little bit. Let's start talking about the industry. David, we'll start with you. Where do you see the industry? You guys have been here. You guys have seen this thing grow. My dad always told me to listen to old timers, and I might learn something. Not saying, did not mean that in a bad way. I know that come out wrong. But
okay, I didn't hear that, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, he was talking to you, David.
I know, but I didn't hear you.
But where have you seen it come from?
Oh.
And where do you see it going? And just the industry in a whole. What do you see it as?
I think we're moving forward great. like me and Jeff were talking about 2005 or 6, you had to travel basically back then to find a catfish tournament. Cabela's, I think, may have started the first one, but they had a few before I started, but I've seen it come a long way. And I believe, I'm trying to fish as much as I can. My nephew's got 2 sons, they're 8 and 4, and they've been fishing women. I've got another friend that's got a 9 and a 7-year-old. And of course, Brooke, when Brooke started fishing with me, she was 17. She's hooked. She texted me yesterday. She said, I'm ready to go fishing. And y'all remember her. She's been in Labana with that baby for the last month. And I know everybody that knows her is praying for her and everything. But I miss her, and I miss her as a fishing partner because, she's a competitor for sure. Everybody knows that knows her. And I want to tell this story. One time we were fishing a tournament out of Memphis, and I'm a pretty good fisherman. We're suspend fishing, 2 rods out the front and 2 out the back. And she's caught like 4 or 5 fish, and I hadn't even got a bite. And I said, what's going on back there? I mean, we're baiting the same skipjack. And anyway, I noticed her cutting her bait, and she turned her back to me where I couldn't see. So after about 2 or 3 hours of that, I looked around, and she was filleting one side of the skipjack, and I guess it was exposing the gut pocket and the backbone and stuff, and she put that on there, and of course she automatically caught one. I thought, so that's what it is. I mean, it's a difference in how you cut that bait sometimes.
Yeah, it is.
I put one on like that, and the first fish I caught weighed 42 pounds. But she's a good one. But I think we need to bring these, and they're interested. Any kid loves to fish. When I see kids here today and yesterday, and they're all into it, and I think that's what I love, taking kid fishing. I'm sure these guys do too. But I think that's what we need to do, and somebody's got to fill our shoes in these tournaments when Jeff's already about retired anyway. So, I mean, if he ain't on cotton picker, he's not
We'll
fishing.
see about that, big boy. We'll see about that. Yeah, that's right.
Carl?
From where the industry came from to where it's going to. I think a lot of people out here seen tournaments years ago. You'd struggle to find a catfish tournament. And I think Jeff said something right before we walked up here. Now, any given Saturday, you can have 4 scattered across the country. The amount of people that have started embracing catfishing is fantastic. And you look around here. The Catfish Conference and what's going on here and how this has been built. And you see spin-offs of the Catfish Conference now going in other areas. Obviously it's catching on. You're talking about what was a small industry. I have no idea how many millions of dollars is pumped through catfishing at this point in time, but I mean, compared to 15 years ago, I mean, it's obviously grown, 1,000%. The amount of people at these events have grown. I think catfishing in the sport is heading in the right direction. There's always some negativity out there that tries to tear down what you're building, but there's a lot of people here that have sacrificed a lot of time, energy, effort to build the catfish market, and I think they're doing a great job, and I'm excited to see where it's continuing to go. Kind of like Chris getting, the TV show. That's something nobody cared about catfish 10 years ago to even think about putting on a TV show. Now, Chris has got a chance to go out and break into that market, which is, obviously going to benefit all of us as well. It's really exciting to see some of these things that are happening and where it can go at this point in time. So I'm glad to be a part of it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. Jeff?
Well, we'll talk about where it's been. When we was talking about them first tournaments we fished, we didn't even there wasn't many companies even made a catfish rod. Some of like my first bumping rods were musky rods. Some of my catfish rods were musky rods. Maybe Surge come out there about that time, and you had Guana making one, and just you had to look hard to find catfish tackle. And then when you walk in a building like this and you see rods going out by the hundreds, you can tell how much our sport has grown, and it's really come along, and it's hit a spot now where it can really grow. And you know, I think some things there's some things that we can all do to help it keep moving on. And Carl hit a little bit about the negativity. You know, that's some stuff, y'all, that's got to stop. You know, I mean, you sitting there and you got some internet warrior trying to burn us down every day over something that, was it a mistake made? Probably so. But hey, let's get over that. We have got to get the negativity out of it. Because for what 100 of us try to do, one can burn that down. What 1,000 of us get together and try to do, one can burn that down. And we got to get over that. You know, I'm not a key puncher. I'm not a drama. I don't like drama. I don't like drama at all. But it's a good thing, because I read some stuff that makes no sense whatsoever on that Facebook page. You know, it makes no sense whatsoever when you're trying to build a sport. And guys, some of these folks don't even fish. That's the bad part about it. That's the bad part about it. You know, so.
Well, you said one key thing a minute ago. Was there a mistake made? You know, I look out in this room, and if anybody in these chairs can tell me they don't make mistakes every day, you're lying. We make mistakes every day. All of us. None of us are perfect. And you know what? To chastise everybody for every mistake they make has got to stop.
Yeah,
you can't grow.
It does. I mean, they're just picking our sport to death. I'll get off that, but I needed to say that. And I didn't need to get behind the keyboard to say it. I wanted to say it. You know, but our sport's grown so much, and we're getting there. I mean, well, I see big things happen. You know, I just really wonder if there's no poll, but if you could take the tournament fishermen in 2006 compared to now.
Look at the boat manufacturers that have come out
just for catfish boats.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, well, look at you, David. You was fishing out of the center console, the bay boat. You know,
hey, I still got that. I still got that boat.
I know
Them center consoles are kind of nice.
I don't like it. Everywhere I go, I see one, and I don't like it.
Especially with the blue top on it, right?
That's right. But to finish off what I was saying a while ago, I've seen this sport grow by leaps and bounds, and we're going through some growing pains right now, and we've got some things that, I mean, it's just got to be worked on. It's got to be fixed, and every sport has done this. You know, when bass started, I heard Bill Dance talking the other day. He said that, you know, their first tournaments, they put their fish in an ice chest, and they carried them. Well, you know, some people got to complaining about that. So what did they do? They changed it. You know, they fixed it. So if we got problems, we just got to fix them, and not just get on there and just burn somebody to the ground about, you know, maybe it wasn't even a mistake. Maybe it's just a problem we got. Maybe it's a problem in the industry. Maybe it's something that's need fixing. But let's fix it. Let's don't talk about it now. So that brings me to my final statement about that. Fix and put a sign on my boat.
When you
shut up and fish. That's what we need to do. We all just need to shut up and fish.
I agree.
Well, they're having tournaments now, Chris, with 150, 190 boats and not one dead fish. I mean, that speaks for itself.
It does. It does.
As far as taking care of.
Man, I mean, we've come a long way, y'all.
Long way.
We've come a long way.
And there's a long way to go. There's a long way to go yet.
And I mean, I see these young boys coming in here. I see them coming in there and getting up above us old timers, but that's a good thing.
Yep.
That's a good thing. And good for the sport. I'm proud to be a part of it, and I think that as we continue to grow, there's going to be more good things happen, because it was just like Carl said, these boat manufacturers. You know, the more money that's pumped into the sport, the more attention the sport's going to get, and the better the sport will be for all of us. And it don't matter if you don't have to be a tournament fisherman, just a catfisherman, catfisherman in general, you know?
When I first started, I was scared competing with Phil King, and I didn't know anything, but I stuck with it. And like Carl said earlier, the guys will talk to you, and I'm nobody but an old country boy. I know. You done, Jeff?
What's that?
You quitting?
I guess I am.
He got a little too worked up talking about social media there.
I believe you done made him mad, Chris. But yeah, you don't have. We've got experience. We've had several years of it, but you can start this year, tomorrow, with no experience, and you'll do fine. I mean, it's not nothing. The Mississippi River took me 7 years before I could go to a weigh-in over there. I'd go watch these guys weigh in, or whoever was fishing. I didn't catch enough to weigh in, but I stayed with it, learned, and I got out there, like Carl said, learned how to bump on that thing. But one of the best places to learn how to bump, and you're going to bump on the Mississippi River if you're going to compete. Am I right? Yeah. You can catch fish anywhere on it. But if you're going to compete to win, you're going to have to learn to bump out there.
You're going to have to
big
get that
water.
rod in your hand.
Yep.
But
you go get that rod in your hand.
Yeah.
And you know something else, y'all, that today, you know, it's all the information out there. You know, when we started, it wasn't no information out there.
No.
There was a few that had some, but you wasn't going to know it.
Yeah.
You know, they wasn't going to tell it, and it was pretty top secret. But we all need to share our information. That's going to make the sport better. If we don't, the sport will die. You know, we've got to leave it better than we found it.
Exactly.
That's what we got to do.
Yep.
But you could go below most of these dams that spill water where the current's not real bad. You can learn to bump right there with a 4-ounce sinker or something, 5.
Yep.
Do that a few times and get the feel for it, and you're good to go over there. It's just going to be bigger weights, but it's just a feel. And most everybody, but I remember a time, Jeff, and I know you do, when there wasn't a lot of people could bump that river.
No.
But it's just been a few years ago, there was probably a double handful that knew how to do it.
That's exactly right.
Yep. It's catching on now.
Yeah.
It's
catches
exactly
on.
right.
You're going to lose a lot of weight over there. I probably got 200 or 300 pounds in there myself. But you got to do it to learn how.
Yeah, you probably put a 0 on the end of that 300. It's probably more like 3,000.
Now, Jeff, you touched a little bit on information, you know, on the internet and how it wasn't there whenever you guys first started. Carl, would you elaborate on that a little bit, you know, on what he was talking about as far as information, how much is out there now compared to whenever you all started?
I mean, there's a well. I mean, it used to be, you know, you couldn't find information on what the river flows were, you know, the maps and things that are out there, navionics and all the different things that are out there now. I mean, you used to know, you could look at a map, you knew a body of water was there. You couldn't see all the contour lines. You couldn't see, you know, all the different features of that. I mean, heck, they've got these maps nailed down now where, I mean, they even mark the areas. If you look at them close enough, there's standing timber here. There's this, there's that. You know, going, you know, water flows. You can go to most, you know, I won't say all dams, but most of the dams around the United States, you can tell what kind of water is flowing out of those dams on a daily basis. I mean, some of them down to the hour to help you judge, you know, what kind of conditions you're going to be fishing out there. The access to being able to interact, you know, and network with other fishermen across, you know, the United States. You know, now there's times, you know, I can get a hold of Jeff, you know, and I mean, find out, you know, I've learned a lot from talking to different guys all across the United States that's got different fishing tactics. You know, and it's, whether it's Facebook, you know, I mean, I'm not a big Facebook guy, kind of cause, you know, kind of what Jeff said, I kind of got burnt out on, you know, all the silliness with it, but there's a lot of people that I interact with on Facebook that have helped me become a better fisherman. You know, the knowledge that they have, you know, goes back to, you know, just talking and networking these guys. But I mean, whether you want weather, whether you want the water temperature, the water flow, you want to look at a map, all around the tools you have at your disposal to be able to make yourself a better fisherman or, you know, a couple clicks away. So.
Dave?
I I can't add to that. I agree with that. That's exactly what I was going to say. So,
All right, now I did have one question from out here that I want you guys to answer real quick. Is how much weight do you feel a catfish loses from the time you catch it to the time you weigh it in?
Oh man, I mean, I've seen them throw up a 4-pound carp in the live well, you know?
Yeah, I think that varies from.
I mean, I've actually weighed some big fish and maybe the cull one and weigh him on a good set of scales, and then he throw up something, it might be 2 or 3 pounds difference in it, you know?
I mean, we've weighed our fish, and I mean, we've came in and they've weighed pretty much identical to what we thought they were. We've weighed those fish, and they've came in, they've been 5 pounds lighter than what we thought they were, and that's kind of what Jeff said. I mean,
Good quality care can help that a lot, though.
Yep.
You know, keeping that water running on them and keeping them fish, keeping them from getting sick, you know.
And that's the key right there, is taking care of those fish.
Yeah, you got to take care of them, man.
You know, typically I don't see, unless they get stressed out from the, you know, getting caught and they throw up some bait, I don't notice a difference in the weight in them, I think, because we take such good care of those fish. I mean, that live well. I mean, I baby them fish. If it ain't me, it's Rob up there checking them every 10, 15 minutes. We make sure the water temperature's cooled down in the summer. We always carry extra ice with us, so that way we can keep them cool, especially when we're getting ready to trailer, you know, to weigh in. You know, sometimes in some of these bigger tournaments, they can be setting, you know, for a little while. We want to make sure that water's clean before we, you know, pull out of that lake. We want to make sure we got the water temperature cooled down, take care of them, and we typically don't notice a big difference if we do our job.
I agree. They're going to, for some reason, they usually throw up what they've ate, I guess, the last few hours or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's going to depend on, but I'm like Carl, it's not going to be a big difference in, if you got a good set of scales that are accurate, that's going to be real close to that, unless he throws up a 4-pound carp or something.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, taking care of them, they get stressed out when you put them in a live well anyway, but that running water, I know Carl's got a hose that big runs on his, and they think they're still in the river when they're in his live well. So, but I think that keeps them from getting stressed out, having a good live well and good circulating live well.
Good information, good information.
How big of a factor does the barometer play in the fish's life?
You know, I got threatened earlier, and I didn't ask this. How big of a factor does the barometer make in fish? And since Carl was giving me the evil eye, he's going first.
I think it plays a big part a lot of time. You know, and I think that especially in a lake situation, I think it has more effect, in my opinion, than it does, you know, like on fishing the Mississippi River, these guys.
Absolutely.
I love fishing, you know, if there's a cold front coming in, I love fishing just before that cold front comes in. And then if you get one of those stalled fronts, I love when it comes in and kind of just stalls right there for a little bit. It seems like that just really fires those fish up. On the back end of that, I don't even want to, unless I'm fishing a tournament or somewhere I'm scheduled to fish. I don't like to fish, you know, the day or two after a cold front, especially, you know, a heavy. So I really believe it plays a part. I mean, we've had some really big days setting out, you know, especially as that front's moving through. It may be a little cloudy, rainy, you know, weather conditions may not be ideal, but the fishing is. And then tomorrow it may be sunny after that thing goes through. It may be beautiful conditions. You don't catch a fish. So I believe it plays a big part in it. We always keep an eye on it. Like I said, I think more in the lakes than the rivers with the heavier current.
One of the best bites that I was ever on in the Mississippi River was April the 2nd, 2006. And the reason I know the date is because a tornado come through and blew lots of stuff away. But it was right in front of that storm. Every hole we stopped in was anchor fishing. Every hole we stopped in. And then that cloud just kept coming and kept coming. And them fish were absolutely on fire. That was the best anchor bite I'd ever been on. And so that proved to me right there that what you just said, that it plays a big factor. And then when that baby gets over with and that wind turns out of the east, what happens, Jason? It's done, ain't it?
Stick a fork in it.
Where do you hunt fish at? Where do you fish for when it's after, like after you find them, whatever, like that?
You know, if I'm fishing, you know, after the cold front set in there, typically I look deeper. I mean, I look in structure. You know, a lot of times, you know, first.
Shallow, deep?
I like deeper. I mean, typically if that cold front, you know, if we got a good cold front coming in, I think the fish move down. It's my opinion.
Yeah, when it's wrong, go back up or whatever.
When it comes back up, it depends, and that will depend on, you know, I mean, where we're fishing and whatnot. I mean, I like deeper water. I'm not really a shallow water guy, so I can't really tell you a whole lot about, you know, typically, I mean, if you catch me fishing 25 foot, I consider that, you know, shallow. That's shallow water to me. I just don't go. I typically don't fish anything much, you know, than that. You know, like we go down to South Carolina or somewhere, yeah, we'll go down in there, we'll fish in, you know, 5-10 foot of water down there, but I'm a deeper water guy.
I thought maybe the fish might move up and come down.
And I think they do. I think they do, but I tend to, you know, my range is usually 25 to 60, you know, so when you're saying they're moving up from 60 to 40 for me, you know, so kind of the theory.
I agree. The barometer has a big effect on. I don't really understand it that well, but I just know after a cold front, it's tough. I usually slow way down, and I don't expect to catch the big load of fish. You know, if you catch your 5 smaller fish limit after a cold front, a bad cold front comes through, you've had a pretty good day. A lot of times we only get 2 or 3 fish after a bad cold front. It definitely affects them.
Now, this gentleman here, he had a question towards tournament etiquette and where it's going. Do you believe that this sport will get to where, like an MLF is, where there's an official in the boat with them, catching, releasing, that sort of thing? Do you think it'll get to that level?
I would hope so, but I'm not sure. You know, it's a pretty good level to arrive at, but I would hope so. I'm not sure if that when or if it will. I'm all for it.
Similar, I think we're still, you know, a few years away from getting to that level yet. But I think that, you know, definitely if we keep projecting catfishing in a positive light, that we can get to that point. I would be excited to get to that point. I think it would be fantastic to get there. But I think we've got a few growing years left to, you know, to keep building and showing that this sport is a, you know, united, respected sport for us to grow to that level. So I think it's something that'll take all of us to keep working for to get there.
I absolutely think we can get there. I absolutely think we can get there. Because in 2006 and 5, and who thought we'd ever be here in Louisville, Kentucky at a Catfish Conference with hundreds and thousands of people walking through it, you know, and rods going out just by the handfuls. We've come a long ways, y'all. That's what I was trying to say a while ago. We can get there, but there's no one person can get us there. It's going to take us all to get there. It's going to, you know, we got to do it for the sport of catfishing. Is what we got to do it for. And yes, but my answer is absolutely. I think it'll come to that, and I hope I'm still around to see it.
Well, the man
Chris,
himself. Oh, go ahead.
We talked to a guy, Gene and I, earlier, him and his family. And I just thought of this. You know, we all got boats. We fish around, but this guy, he's from Memphis. He don't have a boat. He loves fishing. He fishes the Mississippi River, some of the oxbows and stuff. He's here. He's been here 3 years in a row, buying rods, buying stuff. He don't even have a boat. So that's what. It's not about the tournaments completely. Or you know, of course, we all want to grow. But we got people out there growing with us that doesn't even own a fishing boat. You know, that's how. And I think I don't know how it happened that way, but we're going in the right direction. We're not getting just tournament fishermen. We're getting people that love to pond fish. bank fish, we're getting all kind of catfishermen here at this get together, family get together, what I'd like to think of it. We're reaching people.
And we're all one sport. I mean, there's probably some people sitting right here that wouldn't give you 15 cents to go fish in a catfish tournament. And that's fine. They love to catfish. Whether you're a tournament fisherman or just a fisherman or we've got to all be together.
Yep.
Absolutely. And David, you said something. You said you don't know how we've gotten to this point, and I think I can answer that. It's gentlemen like yourselves and women and men that are doing exactly what you guys are doing, spreading information, being good role models for myself, for these other future generations here. So the man himself has got a question for you guys, and I don't want to answer it. He threatened me.
All right, guys, this is a weather related. David Shipman and I talked about this a little while back. Of course, not the Sea Hawk, but one of the tournaments last month on the Wheeler had some bad weather. Winter blues, okay, winter blues. What apps do you guys use to check weather? I like to think NOAA's pretty good, but I don't know if NOAA's got a web app. What do y'all use to check the weather before you got on the big water?
Good question.
I use one called Storm. I got Storm, I got Weather Underground. I use those because I can get up-to-date information no matter where I'm at, locally. It gives me, per hour wind, so I can see, what's current, what's ahead. But that's something that, I'm a big snow removal guy as well. So weather's kind of key to me. So I keep an eye pretty close on that. But Storm is just a app that I use. It's made by Weather Underground. Gives me the up-to-date information. So.
Pretty accurate?
What's that?
Is it pretty accurate?
Pretty accurate.
Yes, it's pretty accurate. No, I use it, because it works for my snow removal business, which I got to be on point with. So the information that I get out of it's pretty. I mean, I can't tell you like anything. There's not a mistake in it here or there, but when wind, it gives you the general velocity of wind. But there's times, kind of like that tournament you're talking. If you also got to exercise a shade of common sense as an angler as well. You see a front moving through. We all know what happens on the backside of a front. When you see those clouds break and that thing's moving through, we all know what's behind it for the next hour. Wind. So you've got to also, you look at the information that's out there, but you've got to take responsibility as yourself, as the captain of the boat, to make the right decision to be safe out there.
I agree. That particular tournament that Steve's talking about, I was the first boat out. I stayed on the ramp all night. I used to have an app called Predict Wind. I didn't have it long enough to really know how accurate it was, and they were predicting 12-mile-an-hour winds at 4 o'clock in the morning and 18 on up in the day. So I knew it was going to be rough. That didn't stop me from going out. It should have, but when we left out at about 5 after 4, I got a couple miles downriver. I can promise you it was 25-mile-an-hour winds. And I hope there's an app. I don't know of one yet. I'm going to check that one out that Carl's talking about. But I think as far as I'm concerned, these big lakes and stuff, it's going to be more important if the wind's blowing double of what you're predicting. They predicted 12-mile-an-hour winds all night at 4 a.m. Now, later on in the afternoon was more. I chose to go out because I knew it was going to be white cappings blowing straight up the river, and we had like 5-mile-an-hour current going down the river. It was really dangerous that morning. 2 of my friends sank, 3 boats sank, and there was several more ditched them on the bank. We made it back, thank goodness, but I think it's really important that if there is an app out there that can get close to the wind. I mean, I've got common sense. I know it's more wind on the water than it is that they predict on the ground. It always has been. But when you go from 12 to 25, that's a little much. That's, my boat can stand a 12-mile-an-hour, a 2-foot white cap, but it couldn't stand those 6 and 8 foot rollers we had that morning before daylight.
I just use AccuWeather. It's just on my phone. It's pretty close. I mean, If it tells you it's gonna be raining in so many minutes, usually it's fixing to be raining somewhere pretty close there, but AccuWeather is what I use.
But I still go back to, we got all these electronics and we got all these apps. You can't blame an app. You can't blame, somebody else for the decision that you make.
No, you can't.
I mean, I heard a lot of that at that tournament. It was this, it was that, it was this. End of the day, if I make my decision to climb in my boat and I know what's going on, I'm smart enough to realize that wind's blowing. It was coming out of the west, and that that river was running to the east. You know what's going to happen when wind meets current.
And it's easy for everybody to step out. I wouldn't have went out in that. I'll be honest, y'all. If I'd been down there, I'd have probably been right behind Shipman when he pulled out.
Yep.
So
I didn't go to the tournament, and I would have done the same thing. I'd probably been out there myself because I feel my boat's a little more safer, but also at the same hand, what we've done at times. We've made the decision to go out and realized this wasn't a good decision.
Yeah, exactly.
We could get back to the ramp. We went back to the ramp. If we couldn't, we went up and we pulled the boat up on the bank. We got out of it. We tied it off to a tree and we sat there until we felt safe. I mean, there's just no sense in putting your health, your life, your family at risk with those decisions for a tournament. So, and it is at the end of the day, it's your decision. It isn't the tournament directors, they may let you go. The weatherman may have told you this. End of the day, you have to take responsibility yourself. So,
I agree with
exactly. Accountability. Something we lack a lot here in these later years.
Well, fellas, I can't thank you guys enough for what you guys have shared with us, shared with everybody else. If you guys do not mind, give them a huge round of applause as a thank you for doing this, sharing this information.